Hello, my name is Rick, Head of Growth at Awell. Today I'm going to tell you how Mindler streamlined mental health support and increased efficiency by 80% using Awell. So before I do that, quick introduction on Mindler. Mindler is a mental health services business based in Europe. They're active in the Netherlands, Sweden, Denmark, and the UK. And it's with the UK team that we work together. So the UK team has something called the Sandbox. This is an initiative sponsored by the NHS where children and young people get access to mental health support. This in the form of content, but also mental health services. And when signing more and more NHS contracts, they noticed that their clinical operations was complex and difficult to scale. And this had two reasons. The first reason was that they had tools that didn't communicate with each other. For example, a form tool, a communication tool, an EHR tool. So what this resulted in is that there were coaches doing a lot of manual copy pasting between these systems to make sure that everything was up to date. And the second problem was that they didn't have one contract, two contracts, but three NHS contracts, and they're scaling more and more. But the big issue is that the more contract that you sign, obviously the higher success that you have, but also the more modifications that you need to do, because each and every contact needed to make some small modifications to the, for example, the onboarding flow or the other flows that they had live. So obviously as a care provider, you want to sign as much payer contracts, or in this case NHS contracts, as possible. But again, making these changes takes time from a clinical training perspective, but also from an IT perspective, because you need engineers to, for example, make modifications to the messages that you send, the forms that you send, the eligibility criteria, and all of that. So that's why they reached out to Awell. Why they reach out to Awell is because normal reaction would be, okay, let's just throw more and more people to the problem. So hire more back office staff that can do the things that don't scale. But Mindler didn't like this approach. They really wanted to use technology to make their clinical operations scalable and prevent clinical ops death. So the before state of Awell was a patient filled in an eligibility form. There was with some if this and that logic. If the patient was eligible, for example, they signed their informed consent, they got a patient reported outcome, in this case the YIP core, and then after that the care team member decided on next steps, and then also manually created the patient inside their EHR. This process took more than 5 minutes. Why? Because they needed to look at a spreadsheet and then decide, okay, what will next steps be like? What are the eligibility criteria? Does it make sense? Because although the form provider that they use could do some eligibility, they couldn't do all the eligibility. So as you can imagine, this took a lot of manual work. So the after state with Awell is pretty straightforward. It's the same. Patient fills in an eligibility form. Then we also send the YIP core if they are eligible. And then the only thing that the care team member needs to do is decide on next steps, which takes less than 1 minute because they have all the information at hand in a nice report. And then once they decided that the patient is eligible for the Sandbox, we automatically create the patient inside the EHR and also pipe all the necessary information to the EHR in the form of a charting note. Alright, now that you understand their use case, I'm going to quickly show you how it looks like from the front end, and then also how they were able to build this using the Awell no-code, low-code studio. So in this case, I'm on my website. I click on sign up. Then I need to click where I'm based. So in this case, I'm based in Swindon. Then you will see that a page opens where the patient can engage with messages and can also engage with forms. So once they have engaged with the messages, the next step is engaging with the forms. So in this case, I need to accept the privacy policy, and then I click on submit. And then in backend, we do some if this then that logic to see if the patient is eligible. So if the patient does not accept, then obviously the flow ends. After that, we ask more questions to the patient. For example, what is your age? Who referred you? Where are you based? And based on that, we again have if this then that logic. So then the question is, okay, what's behind all of this? So in this case, what you see here is the Awell Studio. This is the low-code platform used by Amy or her team to design the flow that we just went through. And what you see here are steps. And steps are the building blocks, and each step can have multiple actions. And actions can be messages, it can be forms, it can be checklists, it can be a calculation, for example, calculating the PHQ-9 or another validated questionnaire, API or clinical note, and then also things like API calls, REST or GraphQL APIs. I will not go in depth in each and every of these actions, because we have a lot of YouTube videos already available on our channel where these things are explained. So the only thing that I want to show you is why is Awell different than, for example, a Typeform or another form provider that you can already use. It's because Awell allows you to define much more complex if this and that logic. So in this case, what you see here is something called transitions, and transitions is essentially our if this and that logic builder. So in this case, you will see that if the patient already signed up, we go to this step, so saying, hey, you already signed up, please update your profile. And if they're not signed up, they get a referral question. But this is a very simple if this and that logic, which Typeform also allows. But with Awell, you can go much further. So you can, for example, say if besides the previous signed up, you can also say has no value or has any value. Or you can also use, for example, the EP score, total score, and you can say, okay, the total score needs to be equal to, needs to be not equal to, needs to be higher than, lower than, and all of that. So as you can see, we have a lot of different operands that you can use. So that's the first big differentiator that we have with Awell. And then the second one is that you can easily connect with third-party system, which is also something a Typeform cannot do. So in this case, what we do is we have a step called email validation, where we do an API call to their EHR, and then based on that, we get data back. And in this case, we get data back if the email is unique or not. So if the email already exists inside the EHR, we go to the message if email already exists, because we say, hey, sorry, your email is already available in our system. Please just update and log in. If the email is unique, then we go to the next step here. So again, differentiator here is that you can easily connect with third-party systems, and this allows you to build much more complex flows. And then lastly, and this is really related to my second point, is that once the flow ends, what we do is we do an API call to the EHR where we automatically create a patient and then also automatically push a sharding node with all the necessary information. And all of this, because you can obviously say, okay, this onboarding flow is pretty straightforward, but as you can see, it can become quite complex really fast. And although I am biased, I think it's fair to say that the results that we achieved together with Mindler are pretty mind-blowing. So the first thing that we achieved is we reduced the time spent by clinicians to onboard patients by 80%. Why is that? Because previously what they needed to do is patients fills in the questionnaire, then they needed to go into a spreadsheet and then look, okay, is the patient eligible or not? And then if they are eligible, then create the patient inside their EHR. With Awell, 80% of the work is automated. The only thing that the clinician needs to do is look at the report, say, okay, eligible, bam, we create the patient inside the EHR, the sharding node is pushed, and the patient is ready to achieve care. The second bit is that we just made their clinical users raving. So we have an average NPS of 9.5. So this means that the clinicians don't like Awell, they really love Awell. And then the third bit, and probably also very important for all of you, is that they are much more agile when they sign new contracts. So as I mentioned previously, what they need to do is they signed a contract with the NHS, with an NHS trust. Then they got requirements. For example, you need to collect this patient reported outcome measure. The patients are eligible if they are between this age. And then what happened was, okay, they needed to retrain clinicians, and then they also needed to make changes by their IT team. With Awell, what they can do is just copy paste the flow that they already have, make the changes in the low-code builder, and then click publish, and then the changes are put live. So Amy and her team are able to make modifications in less than 3 hours based on the requirements of the NHS contract. And last but not least, we facilitated a positive work environment where the clinicians and the coaches can focus on the patients versus doing repetitive administrative tasks. That's it for today. If you're fed up with throwing people at problems when scaling your clinical operations, feel free to reach out. I think there is a reason why organizations like Mindler, Patina, Parsley Health use Awell to automate their routine clinical tasks, to synchronize data between systems, and to also drive coordination between care teams and patients. So if you're eager to learn more, reach out to me and we get something scheduled in the calendar.